Hey, what is up internet? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a very special tech video. Just recently, Apple released the brand new iPhone 14 Pro Max. I was able to get into the pre-order and we have it right here in front of us. We're gonna be unboxing it, reviewing, talking about the good, the bad, the ugly with Apple's latest new iPhone. Is this the phone for you? What should you know before buying it? All that and more. Also next to me is my previous iPhone, the iPhone 12 Pro Max, so I'm upgrading 2 generations up to the 14 Pro Max. Here we go. We got the 512 gig model in silver. Take a look at that. I will say, while it is technically silver officially from Apple, it definitely looks more like a white. Like, it reminds me of like the white iPhone 10, the original white iPhone. So definitely more white than silver, but I absolutely love the color. And for comparison, here's what it looks like next to the Pacific Blue iPhone 12 Pro Max. Personally, I'm a big fan of the color blue, but wanted to change it up. In addition to the silver, there are 3 other color options you can get. There's deep purple, space gray, and of course gold. So plenty of options to pick from. I am sad that there is no other blue option, but I will say the silver looks absolutely great. Here we go, we got all of our things in there. No charging brick, unfortunately, which has been the case for the last few years, but we do have a USB-C to lightning cable and all of the literature, which frankly, I never read. Do you ever read any of this? We at least got the Apple sticker, so that's always a plus. Full disclosure, this isn't my first time unboxing this. I actually got this about a week ago, have been using it ever since, but wanted to show you the unboxing experience. But here it is, the all-new iPhone 14 Pro Max in silver. Let's talk about what's new with this one. Now, I've been using this for about a week and I gotta say, I absolutely love it. It has pretty much lived up to my expectations, but there are a few things you should know about it. Of course, it does come with the all-new Apple A16 Bionic chip, so you should expect improved performance across all of your different apps and tasks. But of course, the one thing that has changed dramatically and has been a source of love, controversy, all different things. Now, say what you will about the name, Dynamic Island totally sounds like a spin-off series of Survivor, but it definitely is a big departure from the notch that Apple has had since the iPhone 10 all the way back in 2017. Now, is it something you absolutely need? That's debatable. I mean, I will say it does look a lot cleaner, and when you see animations like Face ID or calls come in, it is pretty cool. So for example, I can show you just kind of like putting it on ring or putting it on silent. It does integrate some of those animations into the Dynamic Island. However, it is also important to note that if you were to get a notification, it does actually slide below the Dynamic Island, so not actually integrated. But you can see it is much smaller than the old notch here from the iPhone 12 Pro Max. But we love and appreciate any more screen real estate we can get. Got some Nicki Minaj going, and you can see it's actually integrated there into the Dynamic Island. The song that you're playing gets shown, even a little tiny artwork. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but that's really cool. You can even tap on it to bring you straight into the Music app, or you can hold down on it and show you some of the controls, which is pretty cool as well. Something else too that is new with this iPhone is the always on display. Now, some people online have been talking about how it may or may not drain your battery life. Personally, I know that the iPhone 14 Pro Max is supposed to have a longer battery life, especially coming from the 12 Pro Max, but for the most part, it's been basically the same. And so you can see here, this is the iPhone in its sleep position. It kind of dims the screen. I personally find it to be a little distracting. Like, I have a tendency to look down and I think that my phone is on, especially when I first got it and not being used to the always on display, because typically this is what your iPhone looks like when it's locked. Something I will say that Android does a really great job with is having that always on display dimmed down to the point where it's not distracting. You'll see just the time and basic info while the rest of the screen is black. I mean, these are OLED displays, and so turning off those pixels is pretty easy. Now, the big thing that sold me on this new iPhone is, of course, the all-new camera system. Now, Apple says that this camera has a lot of upgrades. One of those big camera upgrades goes to the main sensor, which now gets bumped up from 12 megapixels, as it's been for several generations now, all the way up to 48 megapixels. Now, of course, megapixels don't tell the whole story, but Apple says that it is a 65% larger sensor, should provide you better low light with this new quad pixel sensor. Now, it's important to note too that with the 48 megapixel sensor, most pictures you take will actually show up as 12 megapixels. It's not unless you put it in Pro RAW that it'll actually go the full resolution of 48 megapixels. megapixels. And again, that is only for the main sensor, so of course the ultra wide camera and the telephoto lens still stay at that 12 megapixel sensor, but according to Apple, you should get improved low light performance as well, which is a big deal because I love shooting photos and videos on my iPhone, but when it comes to low light or night shots, I usually default to the main camera since the ultra wide and the telephoto lens don't do as well in low light. These camera upgrades are not only important for photos, but of course also videos. Now, over the last few years, I've been shooting more and more video for my YouTube channel, my TikTok, my job, and so, you know, having these video upgrades is so important. One of the super cool video feature that was in the 13 that wasn't in the 12 was the cinematic mode. Of course, if you're not familiar, this is basically like a portrait mode, but for video. Now, while it was on the iPhone 13, it wasn't at its full 4K resolution, and something new with the 14 Pro is you can shoot at that 4K resolution, which makes all the difference. I did a few camera tests and absolutely loved just how it looked. So I thought it was really cool being able to use that and have that in my arsenal as well. And not to mention, you can even adjust just how much of the background you want out of focus, the bokeh as they call it, and you can just, you know, play around with it and adjust the intensity of that effect. Not only is cinematic mode getting an upgrade, but there's also an all new action mode. Now, if you are big on stabilization like I am, this is something I think is going to be super cool. I shoot a lot of my video on my GoPro Hero 7 with the hyper smooth stabilization, and I must say that is probably some of the best stabilization I've ever used on a camera, given it is, I think, now like 4 years old. And so I'm very excited to have that just natively on my iPhone. Now, I feel like at the same time, I'm not the most action-y person that will be using action shots a lot. I think I could see myself using it mainly for like running shots if I'm really, you know, going out and about, trying to get something in a pinch. I think it'll be really cool to use. Given it doesn't shoot in the full 4K resolution, I believe it's 2.8K. Now, there are actually 3 different focal length options when it comes to photo and video. So previously on a phone like the 12 Pro Max, you had the 0.5, 1, and 2.5 lenses. But here you have, of course, the 0.5, your standard main sensor. But what's new is this new digital 2x zoom, which is actually still the main sensor, but it instead takes the inner part of the sensor and crops it in. So you can still get the same photo if you were to shoot 48 megapixels in Pro RAW and just crop it in, but nevertheless super cool. And now that telephoto lens actually gets an upgrade from instead of just 2.5, it now bumps up to 3. So you should be able to get a little further into those close-up shots. And to help show you what photos and videos look like on the new iPhone 14 Pro, I took it down to Redwood Park here in Humboldt County to show you what it looks like. Shot a bunch of photos, shot a bunch of video, and I must say, it definitely did not fail to disappoint. Of course, I had some pretty solid lighting in this setup, but you can really see the details in the redwood trees in both the photos and the videos. And of course, Pro RAW with that 48 megapixel sensor, you can really do a lot with all of those pixels, and I think it's really great to have that flexibility, especially if you're one that edits photos. And of course, with the new action mode, I had to try that out myself, and you know, I thought, why not run around the Redwood Trail, even though it was quite a workout and I was very out of breath. But take a look at the stabilization. The stabilization was certainly on point, like it was super great. And I think if you're like someone that's running, following someone else in the shot, like you can really do a lot with this action mode. So really great stabilization, given it does crop the sensor a little bit and also doesn't give you the full 4K resolution. I think that's not a deal breaker, and having that stabilization really is amazing. Also, can we just talk about how much bigger these camera bumps, humps, whatever you call it, have gotten on the iPhones? Like, I never realized it until getting this 14 Pro. Like, this is the 12 Pro Max, this is the 14 Pro Max, and iPhone camera bumps have just gotten bigger and bigger. Like, I remember the days when like the iPhone 6 had just like that little tiny hole and it was barely raised, if any. But now here we are. Personally, I'm all for it. Of course, you know, in camera physics, bigger sensors, bigger lenses are so important for the image quality and low light. And you're gonna put it in a case anyways, and it will probably be raised a little bit. So definitely all for that, and always glad to see Apple improving the cameras in any way possible. Another important thing to talk about is, of course, the battery life. Now, Apple claims that the 14 Pro Max can get up to 29 hours of battery life on video playback. Compare that to the iPhone 12 Pro Max's battery life, which then Apple claimed was about 20 hours of video playback. But personally, after about a week of using it, I haven't noticed any significant battery changes. Like, of course, you know, with these bigger iPhones, the battery life continues to be great. I find myself not really needing to have to charge it during the day unless I'm doing some very battery intensive tasks like, you know, shooting video. At that point, that's when I definitely need to plug in and get a portable charger. But overall, you know, really great battery life. I will say one of my biggest pet peeves, and this isn't specific to the iPhone 14, but more so with iOS 16, is this battery indicator. Like, I love that the battery percentage is back. You don't need to like swipe down to see it as you previously have had to. But with that being said, I glance at this and, you know, sometimes it could be at like 30-40%. And in my mind, I will think this is full, but it's not. So thankfully, Apple has a fix for that coming up in future iOS versions. And finally, there are two potentially life-saving features that I want to talk about. The first one being crash detection. So the idea behind it is if you have your iPhone with you and you find yourself in a car crash, your iPhone will sense that you are in a crash and could call emergency services for you. If it detects it using its onboard sensors, it will give you a notification. And if you don't respond within a certain amount of time, it will automatically call emergency services for you. And the other feature, which hasn't officially rolled out as of the recording of this video, but will later in 2022, is emergency SOS via satellite. So if you're ever in an area without any cell service and you need to call emergency services, your iPhone will be able to direct you to the nearest satellite and hopefully connect so you can call emergency services. Now, of course, these are two features that are very new to the iPhone 14. I don't really have a way to test it, and I hope I never have to use it, but it's always great to know it's there. I'm someone that personally drives a lot through the windy roads of Northern California with limited cell service, so hey, you never know when you're gonna need it, and always nice to know that's there for you. So I want to end this off with the big question: should you upgrade to the iPhone 14 Pro, 14 Pro Max? And I guess that depends on a lot of different factors. Do any of the new upgrades or features that I mentioned to you really sound valuable in your everyday life? Another thing is, it also depends on which phone you would be upgrading from. I mean, we hear year over year the new iPhone isn't that different from the last one, but given there's only a small number of people that actually upgrade from generation to generation, personally, I'm upgrading 2 generations from the 12 Pro Max to the 14 Pro Max, so it's a bit more of a jump. But I mean, you gotta ask yourself, is your current phone really doing it for you? Are you having any issues for it? If that is the case, I mean, the iPhone 14 Pro is a fantastic phone, and I think it's very much, you know, a great upgrade depending on, you know, which phone you're coming from. Not to mention, with the 12 Pro Max, I did trade this in, so this phone's actually going back to Apple, and so that took off a huge chunk of the purchase price for this phone. And personally, as someone who shoots a lot of video, has a lot of stuff on their phone, this being the 256 gig model, I wanted to get some more storage, so I upgraded to the 512 gig model. I also use my iPhone camera very frequently, so hopefully all of these new camera upgrades will go to good use. Not to mention, this iPhone is really the device that I will be using most throughout my day, so I'm willing to, you know, invest a little more to really get the most out of a device that I use very frequently throughout the day. And with that, that brings us to the end of this iPhone 14 Pro Max unboxing and review video. Now, I want to know in the comments, what do you think of this new iPhone? Will you be upgrading? Will you not be upgrading? Do you like anything? Do you not like anything? And more importantly, do you want to see more tech videos on this channel? Let me know. And if you did like this video, which I hope you did, be sure to give it a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe and bell button to be notified when I upload new videos, and I will see you next time on the internet. Currently going for a hike. This is on the front-facing camera on the iPhone 14 Pro Max. I'm already out of breath. Really good bokeh, and I think overall it works really well. I'm recording this on the back camera and I can't see the screen, so I'm assuming it looks great.